Hey everybody, welcome to this product day session. Today we are going to talk about data products and how you can distribute them across the enterprise. There will be two speakers, myself, Jean-Guillaume Appert. I'm part of product management, and Marco, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Mark. I'm the UK and Nordics lead for business transformation. So we advise our customers on things like value and operating models, and happy to be here today.
Thank you, Marco. So the agenda will be pretty straight. We'll have a first part around understanding data products. So how do what do we see and at Dataiku, what do we think about data products, and then how you can distribute them across the enterprise, and the final part around what are the key product features that will help you into this journey. Marco, if you want to kick it off.
Thank you. Okay, we will start with understanding data products. And for us, the key difference and the thing we want to introduce is the difference between traditional data outputs or serving the business with some data, some raw materials, some raw information, which they can then gather their own insights or do whatever they want with, versus a data product that has a specific output in mind that's specifically packaged and curated in order to serve a particular need. So we can think about that as the difference between going to a supermarket. Let's say we're hungry and we need to buy something, or we're getting ready for dinner tonight, or we want to do some DIY in our house and we need to buy a specific tool in order to do a specific thing. We could, of course, go and buy the raw materials, the vegetables, the spices, or for the DIY, maybe the materials, some wood, some metal, and build a tool which we then use to perform an action. Or we could buy a product which is ready-made, which I can see the value of very quickly because I have a problem in mind and I need to solve it. I have an action which I need to take and I need to take that action. And therefore I might want to find a product which I can buy, which looks like it could solve that action or is specifically marketed to me in that way, which I can actually use to proceed. So that is the difference we want to talk about around the data product. And it's useful to keep in mind this idea of a raw material or a data as an output versus data as a product in order to serve that need. We can outline this difference if we picture and think about one product. So this is, I think, some sort of cleaning material or cleaning product, let's say. And the difference when we talk about data outputs and data products is moving from those traditional to the more product orientated way. It's from serving a request for data with an opaque intention of usage. And what we mean by that is we serve a business with a set of data or a dashboard, but that they may use in one way, they may use in many different ways. It's not specifically defined because the data is the output, as opposed to data being a product that collaboratively has built in order to serve that business action or objective. So in this case, I need to buy this product because I need to clean my bathtub, and this product looks like it will get something off of some rust off of the bathtub in particular. And this has been curated by the company who's built this product in such a way. One of the things that it addresses, the idea of data products, is the trust around the data. So typically when we move from a world of traditional data outputs where there is a lack of trust in the data or what's being given to me in the business. So yes, I've been served a request for data and raw materials, but maybe I don't believe it. Maybe I have to put my own spin on it. That tends to be challenging and therefore is part of the resolution when we make data into a product, because trust is contingent in the product working. I'm buying this particular thing to clean my bathtub because it works. I don't need to go and make something out of it in order to make it work. The trust is implicit. There is then also an issue with traditional data outputs of ownership and stewardship. So the business use the data, it's the business processes that make the data, therefore they should own it. But they're very reluctant to often because in their business area, what's the benefit of me having suddenly accountability in owning my data for some reason? That tends to go away with data product as a way of working because the product inherently has ownership. I.e., we've built a trusted thing for you as a business person in order to take the actions that you need, but you need to own it. It's a much stronger way of assigning ownership than treating more traditional data outputs in that way. And finally, as we can see by the lovely the diagram on the right-hand side, there is a difference between products which are built just to serve as an output, which are, let's say, not particularly evangelized or communicated in a certain way. It's just, well, here you go, here's some data, versus something that's specifically marketed to solve a problem. I.e., because we've packaged it up, because there's trust, because it's owned, we can now then take this into our business areas and our regional areas as an asset which we want to market. And that for us is the difference of understanding what we mean by data products as we go through today's presentation. Jean-Guillaume, you want to talk about some of the challenges?
Yeah, if we put those challenges into the ecosystem of a company where and what we see and what we generally identify as challenges is that you have a small team of data and AI builders. And one of the things to take into account is data product is also considering AI part of it. It's also an asset that you get out of it. And on the other hand, you have the data and AI consumers that are many different domains, different business teams. There are new roles, new people that are interested into it. So there is a lot of, I would say, pressure in terms of trust, in terms of cost, in terms of a timeline where the business case has to be delivered fast. So at the end, we definitely see some challenges into three areas. The first one is that generally business domains are in siloed in the sense that they make their request to make their use case solved, not the other. So it's too siloed. So we have to stay aligned. There's definitely an alignment problem, a reusability aspect that we have to do. There is then the reactivity. So the ask is generally for a moment which is close enough so that it will generate value. It's not a 6 months project. It's not a 9 months project. So it has to be fast to react and to be able to answer those needs. And then there is a scalability aspect. Of course, as you can see, there is a little bubble for the builders and a big one for the data and AI consumers. So how can it scale? How can we get more and more? So this is more or less the challenges. And one way that we see is that sometimes there is a super big complex workflow to solve those kind of challenges, to say, hey, you know what, I will put a process where you submit a use case, then it will be reviewed, then it will be implemented, then it will be QA, then it will be, it's kind of too complex. So at the end, you end up with something that maybe governed in some way, you see all the pipes, you know where it's going to, but you did not fix the challenges of the reactivity and the fact that the demands are coming more and more. So when I'm in this situation, Marco, how do you help me?
Yeah, very good. It's a common situation, right? So let's talk about distributing data products in that definition that we've used, specifically to counter some of those challenges that you've mentioned. So in a typical, let's talk about operating models for a second, right? So if we consider our central teams, the small bubble you had on your diagram, Jean-Guillaume, that's the data and AI hub. Now, there could be many names for that, but let's think of that as the central entity who are responsible for working generally with data and producing most of the output centrally in an organization. You then have many other peripheral teams, which in this case are functional, so supply chain teams, sales teams, HR, marketing, all of the different teams who have different needs and wants, etc. And then you have teams around the edge or individuals who just want to get their hands on data as well, right? So these are the few layers of an operating model. And in that diagram that you had, the small bubble with all of the pressure on it, that's where we see the common kind of traditional starting point in this, which is that we have centralized and produced all of our producers or people who develop data products here, meaning that there's a bit of a bottleneck, A, and also by the color scheme that we've tried to use here, some of the business areas are, let's say, less connected than others. I.e., maybe in some organizations, the marketing use cases are the ones that get all of the attention. And so my data hub is actually quite well connected to marketing, but there are gaps in other areas of the organization. And what this means is that the production and that bottleneck of production, therefore, serves some areas of business better than others. And what it also means is from a governance perspective, well, because only certain aspects and workflows and use cases are being developed, actually, the governance is generally applied to the outputs that are being produced in the center, i.e., we're producing most of it and we're going to apply our own governance to that. I.e., it's not governance really full scale because full scale isn't the type of operating model that we have. What we see moving and various organizations moving to is much more of a federated way, or potentially partly decentralized, but partly decentralized in a smart way, whereby actually, by virtue of the green you see all over here, the involvement of everyone else, all of these teams, is now more smartly distributed. And what we mean by that could be many different things, but in the view that we want to talk about today, we mean producers or people developing these use case or working with data products and building their own data products actually being everywhere. And that means actually a distribution of people developing data products all around our business area for producing many different things and releasing that bottleneck on the central team. What that means is that we've kind of democratized. We've allowed everyone to experiment and find out find their own data products for their business challenges and for their business actions, which is great because, as we described in our example earlier on, that's what they need to do. They need to find a problem, cleaning my bathtub, and they need to produce something which will repeatedly fix this problem or allow me to take my action many different ways. Therefore, I want to package this up and have this as a business owned product. Excellent. What does that mean for the center? Well, the center still produces and develops the most complex outputs across the organization, enterprise-wide, huge use cases that are built. But crucially, they've been able to scale this and instead impose governance on the other teams, things like oversight, transparency, approvals, etc., in order to make sure that what everyone else is producing and developing is still safe to our organization. And so this is a shift between what does the center focus on, what do the spokes on the outside, the teams and the functions and the regions allowed to do. And how can we make this work? That's the next logical question, right? When we transition between these two traditional operating model views of center is a bottleneck to more of a view of everyone being involved, what does this actually mean? Well, if we focus on those three definitions, so fully centralized being, well, the center just owns and takes full control. The decentralized means the center actually relinquishes all control and actually all of our business teams, our regions, etc., are fully autonomous in that area. And then federated, which is somewhere in between, where the center actually takes a lead, but actually the execution of that particular capability is done within each particular business area or business domain. What we see are four different types of data product work, which you could argue could be anywhere along this line based on your operating model. And the key is to consider how much is centralized, how much is federated, and how much is decentralized. So the four definitions we use for today are data product development, so building this, experimenting, coming up with an idea and packaging it and curating it in a certain way. Data product operations, so things like automating our workflows, publishing them out, managing and monitoring them to make sure that our data products are still alive and working and solving those business actions and cleaning my bathtub. The data product scaling, so how do I take the products which maybe have been produced in one region or one team and scale those to as wide a population as I can? And finally, how do we govern that? So how do we make sure that the checks and balances are in place across the data product lifecycle in order to make sure that this safely works across our enterprise? And the reason that these are bars which go along from the centralized to decentralized is we can think of each of these as capabilities which may be more or less centralized based on your operating model. As an example, let's click through and start from the top. So for data product development, the example that we gave earlier was a decentralized view. So we have producers or developers who are all over the business mostly, and we are giving them free rein to self-service in a way and giving them a democratized view where they are able to build their own data products, experiment, etc., etc. The center is slightly less green in my example. That's not to say they don't do it at all. This isn't all the way to the right-hand side, but they have actually allowed the businesses to perform that upfront development in many cases in order to effectively, in order to allow them to do this at a scalable rate. If we move into data product ops, though, maybe in our example, we want to federate that. So what do we mean by that? Well, maybe the center sets the rules for how data products are maintained and published within our different ecosystem of tools and how they're monitored and managed. and maybe the center actually takes charge of some of them, but actually crucially, we want the regions to also take ownership of the operationalization and management of it themselves as well. And maybe similar for scaling, maybe for sometimes this tends to get more and more centralized in order to really scale. But maybe you could say, well, supply chain have six different key regions in our organizations, and we want supply chain to manage the scaling themselves. And often that's a center-led initiative, but it's executed still within the supply chain function, right? So that again could be federated in this example. But then the governance, we might say, well, no, the governance is specifically with us in the center. That's why all of the other teams have gone a lighter color here. So the center owns governance. The center is the oversight mechanism. The center for the largest use cases, for the ones which incur most compute, for the ones that therefore have most cost, for the ones that also are most valuable, we want to actually have a process whereby the center approves, maintains that oversight, and makes sure that everything that's being done across the enterprise is correct. So this is one example, but the key is to think not necessarily that this is the answer for every organization, but actually to start thinking of these different processes from development to ops to scaling to governance can actually be distributed in an operating model perspective in different ways, and will constantly evolve as new initiatives come along and as new tools come on, which prompt the need for us to consider whether or not some of this should be fully centralized anymore. So,
and of course, I think this is where we come into play into
yes.
As Dataiku will help you make this concrete. And the fact is, what we want to show here right now is, okay, what are the key features or the key capabilities that Dataiku as a universal AI platform is able to deliver? In order, again, we don't have a preference between either of the three, but at the moment you make a choice, Dataiku can adapt and can deliver the features that are necessary, whatever type of distribution model you want to use. So I'll do highlights because we have a lot of features. Definitely on the product development side, we have all the data preparation aspect, all the data pipeline construction and collaboration. We also have the ML part of the platform. The highlight I want to do here is the AI data preparation, which is something that we have introduced sooner in the product. Is the idea to be able to, with a prompt, to generate preparation steps on top of the data. So the concept and the values that you get is that for maybe for non-technical user, maybe in a decentralized aspect, they don't know any much how it works. Maybe it will help them to be onboarding into the product and to do things on their own faster. But there is another aspect, which is a productivity. And it could be in the centralized way to say, you know what, I want to do a prompt that will generate me 10 or 20 preparation steps at the same time. So I don't need to click too much on it. So we cover those two aspects with the AI data preparation, which is definitely helping on both sides. So whatever you choose will be compatible. So next item I want to highlight is on the product ops. I'll have to, because I love those two. The first one is the data quality aspect. So the data quality aspect is how you can make sure that at the dataset level, you set up rules that make sure that the dataset that will be, I don't know, shared or used and part of an asset out of the data product has the right quality. So you can check it at the dataset level, at the project level, at the instance level. So from that perspective, it's a matter of trust in some way. And again, maybe it could be used in a decentralized way where I've built my data product and Marco wants to use it, but I make sure that what I deliver outside of my bubble is right and is good, but also in a centralized way where you want to have that visibility across all the data sets or all the data outputs that you want to check that they are the right quality and the rules that you have defined maybe in a federated environment are applied. So it could be adapted. The right thing with data quality is that if there is a problem, so the monitoring is something that we want to look at. If there is a problem, the next step would be to look into lineage. So today, Dataiku is providing a graphical view of the flow of the data pipeline, which is kind of lineage. But we go to the next level, looking at the column level. And at the column level, just to look at two things upstream to say, okay, what happened? Maybe I had a data quality problem and I want to fix it. So what are the different transformations I have to go to? And downstream with the impact analysis. So where my data set is used so that the output of my data product, what is it? So if I change my data set, what is impact on this output? So again, it goes across the different type of distribution models. So we can adapt and we deliver value on all those type of models. If I go to the scaling part, the highlight. So before getting into data catalog, we have workspaces. So workspaces is also something that is part of Dataiku, where you can share dashboards, you can share data sets, or you can share assets that would be just for consumer to look at and to review. But there is also the data catalog aspect, which is how I can share the golden data set that I've built so that you can build other data products on top of it. So through the data catalog, you'll have a publication mechanism and a sharing mechanism included so that if you want to reuse something, you can do it through the data catalog and through the platform. So all the workflow will be there. So again, from that perspective, if I go back to the distribution model, it could be in a highly centralized way. You can say, you know what, I have my data set, my golden data set that are referenced in my data catalog. All of them are there. This is kind of the list of everything that I have. Or in a pure decentralized way, I'm publishing something on my own data collection, and then Marco can look at it to say, oh, that could be interesting, and I can share it. So both ways are valid because the governance of it could be set in a way that you can have it highly centralized, or you can have it like a sharing mechanism across the different business units. And last but not least, the governance aspect. So the governance aspect, so this one is not a highlight, it's a key capability in Dataiku that we have behind, which we call govern. So govern is what we see has two perspectives. Is a central aware where you can look at all the projects. So more or less what you can call data product in some way. All the project, and you can manage their life cycle from development towards QA towards production, and you can put workflows in place to have sign-off processes to make sure that whatever you do is compliant with the process of putting in production. The same aspect is about compliance. So Govern will also help you a lot identifying what are the data sets that contains PIIs or that contains LLMs. Right now, it's also something that is coming into the play. So all the compliance aspect can be done through Govern. So it's more a stakeholder view of what's happening and have the capability, again, for purely centralized or federated, could be, okay, I have a compliance rule that I need to put everywhere. Or then Govern could be just a tool for visibility. Again, there is more value behind it, but depending on where you put the governance and which model you use, Dataiku can adapt and can deliver value in all the cases. So those are the different, I would say, highlights from the product perspective. Maybe we can have a small summary of it. If
Yes. Yeah, let's do it. I think that's great. So let's consider that with the background of what we talked about from the data product operating models, right? That centralized, federated, and decentralized again. So if we look at each one in turn, along with the functionality and the key capabilities that you've talked about, what's key, I think, is that for each of them, Dataiku can play a role and can actually be a support mechanism to however each of these operating models work within a particular organization. What do we mean by that for data product development? Well, as you mentioned, I think the centralized team tends to be the data experts, right? So for them, it's about basically making the process of building my data products as quick and as easy as possible and as efficient as possible. And so what you showed, Jean-Guillaume, with the data AI data prep is exactly to that point, right? How do I make it as quick as possible? How can I get it to do a lot of the preparation steps for me with some intelligent AI? On the right-hand side, though, to decentralized, where they tend to be less heavy data users, less heavy coders, etc. And therefore, what Dataiku has for some visual recipes can help, but also actually that AI data prep as well, right? If I can type a command into the AI and it tells me how to prepare my data, that's useful for both sides of the coin, irrespective of your skill set. Where it becomes interesting, though, is in the federated one, where actually everybody is involved for different types of data products. Because again, we can serve both types of persona, but also people can collaborate on that much more easily within one tool, right? So within the same system, we have a federated model where we have coders, clickers, AI data prep, which can help, and a collaborative nature to bring it all together. And so that's how those features can actually support with the data product development. From the data product ops side of thing, what you mentioned for lineage is super useful for those centralized, the bigger data products, the most complex ones, right? The ones which require more monitoring and management, and the ones which, if they fall down, tend to have the biggest impact in our business areas, perhaps because they're aligned to critical business activities. And so data lineage and finding out where the issues have happened and therefore more efficiently troubleshooting them is key. On the decentralized view, if we think about just automating data products with Dataiku scenarios, that can automate a lot of the outputs more quickly. And then, Jean-Guillaume, what you mentioned with the data quality rules in the middle can be applied in many ways, but one of the ways that it can help in a federated world is we can set data quality rules from the center level, which are enforced at the federated level, i.e. at the business area or regional level. And again, so each of these functions can actually be used and based on whichever operating model we have. We have two more if you want to finish off.
Yeah, sure. So on the scaling part, yeah, as I was saying, the data catalog in a centralized way is definitely where you will see the golden data set and the list of everything that has been curated and that is to be able to consume. From the federated way, there is definitely this notion of a workspace which is for consumers, just not maybe builders in some way. So they don't want to reuse it; they just want to consume it. So it could be dashboards, or it could be insights, and data catalog is also kind of the same thing. And on the decentralized way, there is this concept of reuse, so sharing, having a sharing mechanism across the different business lines. Because again, they may not need to have all this governance aspect to be able to share things that are important. At some point, they are looking at the same data. It could be the CRM data, or it could be other type of data that is similar. So how can they share between them the best practices that they have built on their own is also something that could be done without a proper governance aspect of it. And on the pure data governance, so as I was saying, there is the govern aspect is a way to enforce the data product publication or to enforce particular rules so that you can have a level of compliance, which is also in the federated way. And the last one is the visibility with the govern side, is that govern will give the visibility about the other project, so that, again, coming back not into forcing the sharing, but the awareness of what's happening outside of your ecosystem, outside of the silo, is also a nice way to see and to get value from other type of business unit. So that's the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening. I hope it was useful. And thank you, Marco, for your participation.
Thank you.
And hope to see you soon on Dataiku website or in any other event.